Our story begins on a morning in one town. We hear the sounds of roosters and see the dawn in the distance. We see a boy who has just woken up and he is stretching after another happy awakening. There are still roosters around and the character is anticipating the start of a new day. The boy goes to the wall and there he sees a broom. He takes the broom and starts sweeping the ground. The main character's name is Yang Kai, and he is an apprentice at the Sky Tower Pavilion. The boy began to undergo training at this pavilion 2 years ago. However, he was only able to reach the 3rd stage of body hardening. This is a rather poor result. Usually, students of the boy's age achieve greater results in this time. Spending 3 years to reach the 3rd step of body hardening is not normal. Rather, it's even mediocre. That's why a lot of people made fun of the boy and mocked him behind his back. Everyone giggled when they saw him and discussed the fact that he couldn't rise to the same heights as his peers. Brother students who entered the pavilion at the same time as the protagonist have long since passed this stage and headed for their future achievements. But the boy had no choice and started doing the dirty work in the cult. Let's continue in training. Now we can just see the boy sweeping the ground next to the roosters. These are parts of his dirty work. Let me tell you more about this pavilion. The Heavenly Pavilion is a sect with a very distinctive feature, which consists of intense competition between the disciples. Everyone here competes with everyone else. And that is the main feature of this place. This is a place where power decides everything. Take it or be taken from you. This law of the jungle has been here since time immemorial. The strongest man wins, and if you don't have enough power, you will always be the loser. Whereas in other sects, the foundation is built on friendship and relationships between disciples. Here it is quite different. If you wish to ascend, you will literally have to climb the ladder of your brothers. You will have to betray and compete with your friends in order to be better than them. And in order to increase your level, you must prove your superiority over others. Heavenly Tower has a rule. Students who are under 14 years old, regardless of their background, are sent for a 3-year internship. This is a prerequisite for studying in this academy. During these 3 years, everything is paid for by the sect, and all you have to do is practice. You don't have to worry about paying the tuition, but you can concentrate only on your training and practicing. Because the skills you learn will be very useful to you in the future. If you can complete the hardening of your body within these 3 years, you will be taken to a famous sect with strong masters who will take you as a disciple. But of course, you can also practice alone if you wish. That's one of the features of this pavilion. No one obliges you to build up your strength here. You can do it yourself if you wish. However, those who fail this test, the body hardening test, they will be forced to leave the sect or become disciple helpers. Heaven Tower Pavilion consists of over 3,000 students. While the student helpers can be counted on your fingers, there are very few of them. Comfort isn't guaranteed. Even if you miss a meal or it's too cold, no one cares. They have tried to evict the boy before. Obviously, he will not let it happen again. We've only lived a couple decades. Since the choice has already been made, one must stick to it. To turn down halfway is ridiculous. The boy realizes that he must continue his studies. He can't give up his goal and must finish what he started. The protagonist walks past a crowd of students and hears shouts in his direction. "Hey, look, it's Yang Kai! It's student assistant Yang Kai!" He still remains at the 3rd level of body hardening. The students laughed at the boy. It was very strange to them that he couldn't raise his level and still remain a helper. Therefore, his level was often a cause for jokes from the people around him. It's been 5 days since the last test. There will be another one today. The boy must show what he can do and finally end the trial with a victory. He's determined. One of the people nearby said, "He is one against so many, it's not fair." The thing is that the test will consist of the boy having to win a fight against the other boys. This is a condition for passing to the next stage. The boy has always failed this test. But another boy, also in the crowd, replied, "No one is keeping you here." He was clearly anticipating what was about to begin, and he liked to win fights against the weak. The main character walked through the crowd and other students and started to sit down on the floor in the middle of this crowd. Everyone around him didn't understand what it was for, and so they just looked at the protagonist in surprise. The boy sat down on the ground and began to meditate, everyone around him looking at him in surprise. From the crowd came questions from the surrounding people. "Hey, why is he sitting down? Is he meditating?" No one could understand the reason for this. One of the students watching said suddenly, "Look, I think you better stop doing this nonsense. Let me beat you up." And we'll both save ourselves some time, won't we? This student knew that the boy was only at the 3rd level of body hardening, and he would definitely lose to him. He smugly looked at the boy and expected an easy victory. Another boy, also standing in the crowd, smirked and added, "He is right. Understand us, we are different from you. The sooner this fight is over, the sooner we can go back to our training." They wanted to deal with the boy, to beat him once again and to be done with it, because they could not imagine that this fight could not end in their favor. But the protagonist's serenity sat and meditated. He did not pay attention to extraneous sounds and mocking shouts. He has long been accustomed to the fact that no one takes him seriously, and everyone jokes at him, and sometimes mocked. So the boy just sat and meditated on the ground. Suddenly the boy heard a bell ringing. It was a very loud and unlike anything else, but it was unmistakable. The protagonist realized it was the morning ringing of the bell. It rings in the morning. When the bell strikes 9 times and the sun rises in the east, then the new day will come. The boy calmly opened his eyes and started to rise to his feet. He had a stick in his hand. Behind him stood a crowd of students. All of them were already stretching their arms and preparing for the fight. Each of them wanted to go against the boy in a duel and defeat him, so they asserted themselves and proved to everyone their strength, because it is very easy to defeat a weak opponent. Behind the boy, the crowd was in an uproar, everyone shouting for the protagonist to choose him. Since the boy has to choose his own partner for the fight, everyone tried to shout something to make the boy choose him. One of the students standing behind shouted, "Pick me! I promise you I'll be lenient!" But a few seconds later, another student had already pushed him, so that he didn't have time to finish his sentence and shouted, "Go away! Pick me! I just need one punch to save us all time!" Everyone wanted to shout as loudly as possible to be heard, and he was the one who came out to fight against this weak opponent. Everyone was trying to shout at each other. Everyone wanted to cover the other's mouth with his hand, and everyone was trying to get as close to the boy as possible, so that he would choose them for the fight, and they would easily finish this duel, as everyone enjoys defeating the weak. Shouts were heard everywhere. "Pick me! Pick me! Pick me!" But one of the students standing there was fed up with all this, so he decided to calm down the people around him and said loudly for everyone to hear, including the boy, "Yang Kai, hurry up and choose your opponent." He wanted this mess to stop, and the main character to finally choose a sparring partner. But the main character didn't care who to fight, so as soon as everyone was quiet, he tossed his broom up and twirled it. As soon as the broom fell to the ground, it pointed its tip at the one with whom the boy would fight. Everyone kept quiet and waited for the result of this roulette, and as soon as the broom fell, everyone immediately looked at the student who was pointed at by its tip. It was a boy with dark hair. He looked at the medal confusedly, because he himself did not expect that he was the one who would be chosen to fight. But the boy with dark hair was not confused. He immediately smiled and laughed. Turning to the others, he said, "Dear brothers, today I was chosen, so don't be angry." He looked at the people around him with a satisfied look, realizing that everyone was jealous of him, and now he would have the easiest fight. Everyone around him was really jealous of him. Some were holding their hands on their heads and were upset that he wouldn't be able to beat this newcomer easily. One of the students standing behind him said angrily, "You're a lucky asshole," but there was nothing to be done. Your boys stood opposite each other, waiting for the sparring to begin. On the left stood the protagonist, apprentice assistant Yang Kai's 3rd stage of body hardening. Opposite him was ordinary apprentice Zhou Ding Yun, who was at the 5th stage of body hardening. In the Heaven Tower Pavilion, the disciples are differentiated by rank. The lowest rank is the assistant disciple, followed by the ordinary disciple, then the senior disciple, then the elite disciple, and the highest rank is the core disciple. The core disciple is chosen from among the elite, later becoming one of the leaders of the sect. The protagonist is at the lowest rank is the assistant disciple. If he can win this fight, he will become an ordinary disciple. The boy realizes that his opponent, though an ordinary student, is one rank older than him, but he has not yet been accepted into another sect. This means that the protagonist has a chance to win, even if small, but a chance to win. And the boy hopes to realize all his potential and use all his strength. The duelists simultaneously bowed to each other, and with a chorus said to each of their opponents, "Good sparring, good luck." After these words, the duel began at that very second. The fight started, and both sparring participants ran towards each other. The protagonist performed one of his prepared punches. At the same time, his opponent realized that he was trying to make a wide kick. This is a mandatory technique for lower-ranked students, So the dark-haired boy anticipated this kick and easily returned from it. As soon as the protagonist's opponent returned from his predictable punch, he immediately delivered a knee strike to the boy's stomach. The younger student expected his kick to reach its target, but it turned out not to be the case. And as soon as the boy missed that kick to the stomach, he immediately lost most of his strength. The protagonist decided to outwit his opponent, and on the next blow of the boy with dark hair, he dodged and struck his blow. But the student assistant's blow was not so strong and could not damage his opponent at all. So after the boy with me hair recovered from the small blow, he immediately threw his... And after that, the protagonist was no longer able to stand on his feet and fell to the ground after the heavy hit. But the boy with dark hair realized that the main character's punch was faster than his, but his body was weak, fragile enough that this punch would be critical for the boy. If the dark-haired boy's level of development was the same as the protagonist's, then possibility, he would be the one lying on the earth now. The protagonist's opponent stood up and said, "Brother, you let me win, thank you." The boy was sure that the fight was over and he had already won, as his opponent was lying on the earth. But everyone around him whispered and laughed. They realized that he just didn't know Yang Kai's reputation. After all, the protagonist never gives up after the first defeat, and always asks for a rematch and starts the fight again even if he lost. The boy with dark hair looked at the people around him and realized that this fight was getting interesting. He didn't understand why he didn't win. After all, he had only used one strike to defeat him. Wasn't that a victory? Relying on the rule of the sect, his opponent should have lost since he couldn't fight anymore. At this time, the main character was lying on the ground after a heavy blow. But at this time, to the surprise of his opponent, the protagonist rose to his feet and said in a confident voice, "Once more." He was ready to do battle once more and gather his strength. Since this was the second time he had lost at these trials, and the boy was very motivated to finally end them with a victory. So he was ready to start all over again. The fight started again, and both participants of the fight ran at each other. The main character tried to use the learned technique again, but his opponent realized it. He realized that the boy wanted to use a technique called leg whip. But the main character's rival was ready for this and used the same move faster than the boy. He used it more skillfully and with more skill, because he has more experience in using these blows. The protagonist was again on the ground. He was again hit by a strong blow and lay down without strength. But after a few seconds he stood up confidently and said again, "Once more." The boy was ready to fight again and again, until he could not win, and until he could not get to the next level, because he was tired of everyone making fun of him and the fact that he was the worst in the academy. Behind the backs of the sparring participants, the other students were whispering and talking. One of them said, "This Yang Kai is unbelievable. How long is he going to get up? He's going to lose anyway." None of the students believe in the boy's victory, because he is the weakest one here, and no one has ever lost to him in a fight. The opponent of the protagonist was already tired of this fight. He did not expect that the boy will show such persistence, and the boy with dark hair planned to make one blow and thus end the fight. But the protagonist was constantly rising and asking for more and more rounds to show his strength. The protagonist's opponent was already tired of saying, "I can't believe that I was challenged to a fight by such a madman." The fight started once again. The protagonist's opponent shouted to his opponent, "Are you out of your mind? If you don't surrender right now, you'll cripple yourself." The boy himself was urging the protagonist to give up, and give up trying to win, because he had no chance at all and no hope that he could win. If this fight continues, the boy may seriously injure himself. But the protagonist did not listen to his opponent. He was obsessed with the idea to finish this fight in his favor, and finally get to the next level, so he was not afraid of any obstacles and risks. He once again started the fight, and both opponents took a step towards each other. The main character's opponent decided that he didn't even need to attack and strike now. He just dodged the boy's attack and he fell to the ground. He was very tired. All these rounds had exhausted him, and he had no strength at all. So for the last round he didn't even need to be attacked to just fall to the ground without strength. He lay next to his opponent with no strength to get up. That was the end of the fight. The protagonist once again failed to win and remained at his level. On the tree, behind the crowd that was watching the fight between the boy and his opponent, there was a girl. She was standing on one of the big branches and writing something in her notebook. She was watching the fight very keenly, and it was clear that she was not indifferent to it, and had been standing there for a long time, watching what was happening. There was an inscription in the girl's notebook. She had just written it after the protagonist fell down. Apprentice assistant Yang Kai fought with ordinary apprentice Zhou Dingyun. Zhou Dingyun won. The Shadow Hall of the Heaven Tower Pavilion is a special purpose force. They are under the jurisdiction of the Third Elder. Their job is to keep records of everything that happens within the sect, including fights between disciples. Therefore, the girl was the representative of the Hall of Shadows. She kept a record of this fight, and at the end of it, she wrote about the boy's loss. None of the students in this academy worry or fret about their achievements and points earned in the sect. No one thinks that their points might not be counted or unnoticed, as the students of the Hall of Shadows take into account everything that happens within the academy. They proclaim their results every month, and they have no mistakes or inaccuracies since they keep track of absolutely everything that happens. The girl had been keeping these notes for a long time now, watching the main character. She had many notes in her notebook about the boy's defeats over the past many months. It was already the 7th month that the boy was once again losing his fight, so the girl finishes her inscription of another defeat and closes her notebook. She realizes that being defeated 147 times already, that must be a record number in the history of the Celestial Pavilion. The boy should have already been demoted apprentice assistant by now, and his well-being is being neglected. So why is the boy still here? The girl doesn't understand the answers to this question. The boy woke up and looked around. He didn't understand where he was and why he woke up here. He remembered that he hadn't passed out under the tree. But why he was here then? His last memory was of the battlefield, and he didn't understand why he woke up here and who had brought him here. The protagonist realizes it's strange. Someone was kind enough to drag him right under the tree. The boy did not remember such a thing before, because before that he had often fainted during battles, and woke up there on the battlefield. But even though the boy had been dragged away from the fighting, his bleeding wounds were still there. The boy was in a lot of pain. The battle had not gone without a trace, and he had many wounds that hurt him. The boy thought that the one who helped him move under the tree could have just left the boy on the battlefield and not done it, because now the protagonist would have to do a lot more healing. He wasn't happy about it. But suddenly, the boy found something in his pocket, something glassy lying there, which was not there before, and the boy decided to check what it was. Putting his hand in his pocket, he realized that it was a vial of healing ointment. It is a very valuable drug that helps in healing wounds and bruises. It is very effective and rare. It was an ointment that stimulates blood clotting. This medicine can be purchased here for 10 achievement points. It was insanely expensive, and the boy wouldn't be able to buy such an ointment even with a month of dirty work. Such medicines were unattainable for him. But somehow a vial of this ointment ended up in his pocket and is now right in his hand. Apparently, whoever had dragged him under the tree had also supplied the boy with this medicine. He opened the vial and smelled it. It was an incredibly delicious aroma. The protagonist realized that it was medicine with odor-enhancing herbs. It was very rare here, and such medicines were insanely highly valued among the fighters. The boy realized how extremely lucky he was, but despite the fact that the boy did not know at all who could help him so much and who could do him such a favor and give him such a valuable thing, he decided that he would definitely repay this kind person in the future, but not now, because now the boy has absolutely no money. So he gets to his feet and picks up his broom. The boy returned to his home, along with his broom. He opened the door of his cabin, where his bed and other household things were. He undressed, hoping to use the medicine to take away the pain from his wounds, since this time, the fight had been very traumatic, and the boy had more bruises and injuries than in previous times, and he needed to recover from it. The boy took off his clothes. His whole body was covered with wounds and scratches. Everywhere there were visible bruises and traces of blood, and it was clear that this fight was very hard for the boy. But even considering such sacrifices, the main character could not win and increase his level, so the boy came home in a very bad mood. The boy took out one of the basins and filled it with water. Then he opened a bottle of ointment, which he found in his pocket, and took a little of this healing substance. The boy diluted a little ointment with water, and then began to rub his wounds as soon as the ointment touched the bruises on the body of the main character. They immediately stopped hurting, and the boy felt much better. A pleasant cold covered his whole body, and the boy felt finally relieved. The clotting ointment is good for physical wounds, but the boy realized that if he diluted it in water, the effect would be much weaker. But he has no other choice. This ointment is very valuable, and he cannot spend it so quickly, because early his body is very much. If he will and spend it all, one bottle will be enough for one day only. So the boy decides to use up the ointment slowly and mix it with water. After the boy had dressed all his wounds with a solution of water and ointment, he decided to lie down to sleep. The protagonist was really very tired and needed a little sleep to regain his strength. He took the big black stone he usually sleeps on and put it in place of his pillow. The boy lay down and fell asleep. A boy sleeps and he has a dream. In this dream, he is again in a duel with his rival. His rival is yelling, "Why doesn't this idiot give up?" As in reality, the boy starts the fight again, hoping to end it in his favor, but this time, the boy swoops at his opponent and gives him heavy blows. His opponent loses his balance and falls. The protagonist stands looking at his damaged opponent in surprise. He can't believe that he finally did it and finally won the fight. He stood there with a proud look and said, "I had no trouble defeating you. Soon, no one in the entire world will be able to resist me." The protagonist was pleased with himself and was confident in his abilities. But suddenly, the black stone on which the protagonist was sleeping lit up with a violet light. The boy did not wake up yet, but this color became brighter and brighter, and in the end it burst into a huge violet flash, which made the boy wake up. The boy woke up abruptly. He still remembered his dream, and the occasion ran down his face. He couldn't believe what he saw, and didn't understand what kind of dream it was. In this dream, the boy saw himself as too frightening. It was all nonsense. He didn't want to believe it, and decided that it was just a scary dream and not worth taking it seriously. The boy got out of bed. He knew that he couldn't sleep so much, and looking at the sun through the slit in his house, the boy realized that he had slept for only a couple of hours. It was time to get up and get to work. After all, he still had to pay back the money for the ointment he had given him. Carefully he made his bed and adjusted himself for the working day. But suddenly, his attention was caught by one strange object, which the boy found to be ordinary. But now something was clearly wrong. The boy picked up the black stone on which he had slept, and realized that this piece of stone seemed different, as if it had become a little lighter, and something had changed in it. The boy held it in his hands and scrutinized it closely, trying to understand what was wrong. But suddenly the stone jumped out of his hands. It lit up with a bright purple light, and the boy stared at everything happening without realizing. The stone seemed to jump out of his hands and turned into something else. Suddenly, the stone turned into a book. A black book, with thick pages and nothing but black. It was beautiful, and surely held some kind of mystery. The boy immediately realized that this was no ordinary object, and something was wrong here. After hanging in the air for a while, the book fell to the floor, and the purple light that was coming from it stopped immediately. The boy, perplexed, bent down and picked up the book. He was wondering what kind of magical artifact it was, and why his stone suddenly turned into this beautiful black book. After all, before this, the protagonist was not used to seeing any magical manifestations and magical wonders in these places. The main character picked up the book from the floor and opened it. He realized that it was just an ordinary, empty book. There was not a single word in it, and all the pages were completely black and empty. The boy noticed that the book was quite sturdy and made very well, made of expensive materials and beautiful paper. The protagonist remembered that he found this black stone while he was hunting in the mountains, and he never thought that the stone he used as a pillow would turn out to be a book. But now the question was, what good was an empty book? A book that had nothing written in it at all. He didn't know what to do with this object or what the point of it was, but suddenly, just as the boy was about to close the book and put it aside, golden words appeared on one of its pages. The sentence that appeared on one of the pages was illuminated with yellow color, and it was as if it was made of golden letters. The inscription read, "With the right vessel, a golden body will descend. This is not a miracle, but a golden immortal." The boy slammed the book shut with force. He did not understand the meaning of these incoherent words, so he hurried to close the page as soon as possible. The boy thought that these words had an intimidating aura, and he didn't like it at all. But still, curiosity sat up. Drops of sweat were already dripping down the boy's face. He was madly curious about what this magical object was, because he didn't often get such opportunities to explore something secret and magical. So the boy opened the book again after a few seconds and decided to finish reading the phrase that appeared on one of the pages of golden letters. The full text was as follows: "With a suitable vessel, a golden body will descend. It's not a miracle, but a golden immortal. A majestic golden body. No rules to be broken. Let the indomitable spirit descend." The boy read the last lines of the text with bewilderment. Let the indomitable spirit come down. What it means, the protagonist could not understand the meaning of these strange words, because the stone suddenly turned out to be a book. How it is possible? Maybe this book had something to do with the boy's last dream. In his head accumulated assumptions and guesses. The boy read another line in the book. With a suitable vessel, a golden body will descend. The boy still didn't understand the meaning of these words, but he decided to try it, if this object was here for a reason. The boy put one of his fingers to his teeth and bit the skin off a little. Red blood spurted from his finger, and he wiped the blood on the page of the book. The blood was absorbed at that very second, and there was no trace of the blood stain on the page. Suddenly, a large purple vortex appeared from the book. It was a tornado of purple matter. It all looked like a tornado, but this tornado appeared from the page of the book the boy was holding. His blood had long ago vaporized from the page, and now this tornado, which consisted of black and purple glow, was bursting out of the book. A few seconds later, a golden glow appeared in the middle of this tornado. A large golden ball appeared in the center and increased with each second. From this ball also appeared other golden pillars of light. All this brightly illuminated the boy's room, and he did not understand how to react to it. Suddenly, a phrase was heard. With a suitable vessel, a golden body will descend. Apparently, this golden body was appearing right now, before the eyes of the protagonist. Suddenly, this golden glow turned into a skeleton. This skeleton was meditating in the air, and golden pillars of light were emanating from it. This skeleton was sitting in the middle of a huge golden ball, and levitated above the main character's head. The skeleton looked angrily at the boy and said with undisguised anger, "Is he mocking me?" The skeleton looked at the boy with a desire to grab him and hurt him, but it seems that he will not succeed. The boy at the same second himself stretched his hand forward and stopped the skeleton's advance in his direction. He confidently answered him, "Know your place. You're just an ordinary skeleton. The boy will not allow himself to be harmed and will be able to defend himself against this strange creature." The boy grabbed the skeleton by its head, hoping to push it away from him. But suddenly there was an explosion, and the boy was thrown back. He closed his eyes and did not understand what happened. It seemed to him that everything around illuminated golden light, and everything around glowed yellow. The boy could not see anything around, but suddenly everything ended as quickly as it began. The main character was sitting on his knees in his room. Sweat was dripping down his face, and he felt the skeleton's hand on his chest. The skeleton wanted to claw at his chest and would not let go. But the boy tried his best to counteract it and resisted. He still couldn't understand what was going on and what this creature wanted from him. Desperate screams and sounds of struggle could be heard from the boy's house. Students passing by turned around and looked at his house, usually a quiet and peaceful house. Now it seemed to be a place of desperate fight and battle between man and some unknown creature. The protagonist realizes that this golden immortal wants to take over his mind and body, but he will not allow this creature to do so. He will defend himself and his mind. It's not going to happen. After a few minutes of struggle, the boy was lying on the floor of his house. He was still trying to comprehend what had happened. He pondered all the events of the previous minutes and lost his head with his hand. He wondered to himself, what was even going on here? And what was this book doing in that forest where I found it? The protagonist could not understand who could leave in the forest this book and why it was created. If it is some ancient relic, then why it was just lying in the forest unattended. But suddenly the boy was distracted from his thoughts. He realized that his body was no longer but this more. His wounds no longer gave him discomfort, and he did not feel them at all. The boy even felt that he had become much stronger. It was as if his body had become many times stronger than it had been. It turned out that all the wounds the boy had received during the battle had finally evaporated. There wasn't a single scratch on his skin. All the battle marks were gone. But even so, even if the boy feels a surge of strength and energy in his body, he still remains at the third stage of body hardening. His stats haven't improved in any way, so there's no radical change, and he's still at the lowest level in this academy. But suddenly, the protagonist noticed one unpleasant thing. The book with which the boy fought a few minutes ago disappeared. He could not understand where it went, because just now it was right on the floor of his house. But now he could not find it absolutely nowhere. It feels like it just vaporized in an instant. But suddenly, as soon as the boy noticed that the book was missing, it suddenly appeared on the floor. It appeared in the place where it had not been a few seconds ago, as if it had dissolved and reappeared. The boy looked at the place where the magic object had appeared, and wondered how such a thing was even possible. The boy took the book in his hands and examined it once again. He tried to command it. Disappear. After these words, the book disappeared from his hands. As soon as the book vaporized, the boy said, "Reappear." And as soon as the boy said this phrase, the book reappeared in his hands as if dissolved and reappeared. The boy realizes that this book is made of spiritual stone. Only when hundreds of millions of spirits gather in the abyss together, coupled with exorbitant human labor, is such a spiritual stone created. This is a very rare phenomenon, and the protagonist is very lucky to hold such a rare relic in his hands. The protagonist realizes that with a treasure like this book, not only can he easily crush the celestial pavilion, but also almost any expert in this world. This book can give him incredible power, with which he can become invincible. But the protagonist realizes that now he is too weak to protect this book. He can't keep it, because he can't fight back against anyone who would try to take it away. He must practice to become stronger. It is the only way to protect this book. He has no right to lose it. This chance comes only once in a lifetime, and he must keep this book with him and never lose it. The protagonist realizes that from this point on he has traveled a lot and seen different things, but now he is going to train. Now, since the protagonist owns this black book, he needs to make the most out of it. There are many more pages in this book. Hence, there is more treasure hidden there, and the boy has a lot to learn in this magical object. The boy opened the book again. He knew that he had to study every page of it, and he had to get the most out of it. He opened another page and read, "The Majestic Golden Body, Notes on Body Tempering." As the boy was reading this, golden reflections of light began to appear next to his head. Golden streams flew next to him, and he felt as if something was flowing into his mind, and as if he was beginning to understand something. It turns out that the boy opened this book at the point of notes on body hardening techniques. These notes are supposed to help the reader pump up his body hardening. The boy sees an illustration of one of the punches in front of him. He realizes that this punch looks simple. However, it is not. In order to practice this kick, there is a strict requirement to practice this technique only while facing the rising sun in the east. Because of this, it follows that the protagonist will only be able to practice this strike for half an hour every day. The boy decided that he would definitely do it the next day, when time allowed him to do it. So now he just closed the book and realized that it was late, and he had to go to bed in order to gain strength for tomorrow's training. The boy closed the book and went to bed. And the next morning the boy woke up in a great mood. He woke up even before sunrise and before the roosters crowed. He realized that this was the right time, and it was the time described in the book. Only if now he would train the blow, it would give the right result. The boy began to train. He remembered everything he had read on this book, all the smallest elements he had seen there, he used now. He realized that he had to train and become much stronger in order to be able to defend this book and to be worthy of possessing such a treasure. Suddenly, while repeating one of the elements, the boy felt an incredible pain in his back. His spine hurt very badly, and the boy could not continue training. He was distracted by it and almost fell to the ground from the pain. He realized that training will be given to him much harder than he thought. It is very hard, and his body is not yet ready for such loads. The protagonist realizes that it was only the first 3 moves of 6. It's not even 1% of A's body hardening techniques, much less. But the boy already has some difficulty in learning. He's not even halfway through because of the path A is already feeling a decline in strength. But the only thing the protagonist knew for sure was that he should not give up. He has in his hands the most valuable relic, and not every person is given such a chance. He must not lose it, and must take advantage of the opportunity that life has given him, so he is obliged to improve every day and train despite everything. Despite the pain and fatigue, the protagonist continues to perform training. He performs them diligently and correctly, observing every, even the smallest movement, and taking into account all the details that are described in this book. He realizes that if he retains diligence, the result will not take long to wait. After half an hour of northern training, the boy decided to take a break. He took a breath and decided to try and recover. All this time, he had been practicing the exercises diligently and following all the details and instructions in the textbook. But suddenly, as soon as he exhaled after a hard exercise, he felt an incredible feeling inside him. He had felt it before and knew what it was like. The feeling enveloped him all over, and he could feel it from the inside out. The boy froze with astonishment and remembered what this feeling meant. He said to himself, "This is the feeling. Have I really reached the 4th stage of body hardening?" The boy had spent almost 3 years to reach the third stage of body hardening, and here he only needed half an hour to get to the new level. The boy has saved a huge amount of time. This book has given him incredible knowledge. With this knowledge, he will be able to become the strongest. The main character realizes that this technique outlined in the book is insanely effective. He only took half an hour to achieve the next step. He needs to keep going, and then he will be able to achieve incredible results. But as soon as the boy realized this and felt inspired, he immediately felt very nauseous. He immediately vomited a huge amount of incomprehensible mass. He had not expected such a thing, and so he was not prepared for it. The protagonist realized that these were impurities of his body. It was they that came out of him through vomiting. Practicing body hardening techniques helps to gradually remove impurities from the body. It's a normal phenomenon. The boy had experienced this before, but never with such a large volume as this. But even though the protagonist has moved on to a new stage, he still hasn't been able to make any real progress in learning the fist hardening technique. He has been able to comprehend about 1% of the entire technique, but what will happen when he fully masters it? That is when the boy will become a truly powerful fighter, and that is what he is currently striving for. This is his main goal. He must not miss the opportunity that fate has given him. The protagonist took his broom in his hands and confidently went forward. He realized that in front of him now huge opportunities and he should not miss them. Everything is now in his hands, and his future strength depends only on the diligence of his training. He must do his best. The boy was quietly sweeping the yard, as he needed to do according to his tasks. He still had to earn points and he was still a helper, so he did not forget about his work. The girl in the tree was watching him. She was looking at him carefully and without taking her eyes off him. Passers-by laughed at the boy. Someone asked curiously, "Yang Kai, how are you?" Some laughed at the fact that the boy had been sweeping in the same place for an hour, but mostly everyone just looked at him from the sidelines. After all, being a helper, it is not cool, and so to many people the boy was a loser. Despite the fact that the main character is now practicing new tactics and special hardening training techniques every morning, he still has time, and in this free time he is engaged in work. Suddenly the boy heard someone sneaking up behind him, and the boy heard the footsteps. He sharply hit the person coming from behind on the head with his stick. Turns out it was another student who for some purpose wanted to sneak up on the boy from behind. Maybe he wanted to hit him, but the boy prevented it. The protagonist asked if the student was all right. This boy was sitting on the floor holding his head. The blow had hit him exactly on the head, and now he was rubbing the bruise. The other student didn't understand when the boy had become so strong and agile. Not so long ago he was like an autumn leaf that couldn't stand up to anyone. Now he has great speed and strength. No sooner had the protagonist asked the student if everything was okay and if he was hurt, but he had already run away from him. He did not want to stay alone with the boy for a long time, so he ran away on his own, shouting only to the protagonist that he ran to the Hall of Merit, like everyone else today. The boy suddenly remembered it too, because today was the 8th day of the month, which was the time to go to the Hall of Merit. As previously mentioned, every 8th day of the month, all of a student's achievement points are summed up, and as a result, they are rewarded and perhaps even promoted. But the boy had only 10 contribution points, but he was challenged to a duel 6 times. Losing all 6 times, he was robbed of 6 points respectively. It follows that the protagonist will only get 4 points for this month. That's very few, and he definitely won't have enough for anything with those points. The boy got frustrated and realized that he could have just kept sweeping, so they remembered it. But now he's frustrated, he'll have to go to this place for his little amount of points. But the protagonist still decided to come to this place, although he has few points, but accumulating from each month a little bit at a time, still in the end, can get a good amount. So he decided to go and collect his points no matter what. The boy approaches the old man who's in charge of giving out glasses. He realizes that it is the old man again dreaming about the students from our pavilion. He was always thoughtful and rarely paid attention to the students who approached him, and the boy still decided to attract attention and called out to the old man. He said in a slightly loud voice, "Guardian Meng, are you here?" The old man immediately turned his attention to the boy and said cheerfully, "Ah, child, it's you. I've been waiting for you." The boy calmly replied, "Yes, it is me." The old man calmly asked why the boy didn't arrive here this morning like everyone else did. The protagonist replied that he had too much to do this morning. The old man replied that of course he understands everything, but the boy has now interrupted his serious thoughts about the mysteries of the universe. The boy realizes that the man is just joking, and therefore does not take his words seriously. The boy said that he was as usual, and would not demand anything new. The old man said he understood and handed him 10 pieces of silver. Then he wrote something down in his notebook, probably keeping a record of how much silver he gave out, and to whom. The boy took the silver that the old man gave him, and decided to wonder how many treasure points he had left in his possession. The boy wanted to know how many he had. The old man looked at the boy and said, "Every month you get 4 points, you spend one of them on 10 silver, you are left with 3. In total you have 12 treasure points. So you would like to purchase a bottle of healing cream?" The boy refused. He said he didn't want to buy a bottle of cream to heal the wound. He didn't need it. He realizes he doesn't even have enough money for that. He only has 12 silvers, and he doesn't even have enough for 1 stalk of precious herbs. The old man looked at the boy with pity. He knew that he was having a hard time, and every coin was hard work for him. He always watched the boy coming to him to get his pennies and always observing him. He said to the boy, "Little Kai, I know you were trying to save up for the pill of essence hardening, however, how long do you want to collect points? Your strength growth suffers inordinately because of it." The man realized that the boy would never save up for what he wanted, and he wouldn't be able to do so for the next few years. The boy calmly listened to the old man and calmly answered him, "I can succeed in the end, can't I?" The boy realized that even if he couldn't realize his dream soon, he could still achieve it after some time. But the old man replied that with his current growth rate, he would probably be gone by the time it happened. The boy decided to ask the old man what he had not dared to ask before and what he wanted to know. He asked how it was that after the announcement that the essence tempering pill had appeared in their pavilion, no one had exchanged it for their glasses. No one had used it or bought it, although many students had gotten many times more points than the boys, and could have saved up for it. The old man laughed in response and said that it was because he personally administers the substance and not many people know about it at all. The boy was dumbfounded. He could not think that it was such an exclusive thing. He asked the old man in surprise, "What, so you have it?" The old man calmly looked at the boy and said, "I will not think anything extra. Even if I have it now, I will still have to exchange it for the contribution glasses. My word is not the last word here." The old man realized that the boy might ask him for this substance just out of the goodness of his heart, so he immediately said that he could not do it. The boy replied confidently that he could accumulate enough contribution points and would do it. The old man grinned back. He found it hard to believe that the boy would be able to save such a large sum. He decided to ask him if it was true that he had been beaten up again recently. The boy heard this and walked towards the exit. He didn't want to continue this dialogue and discuss his defeat, but the old man shouted from behind him and said, "Hey, don't leave and talk to me." The boy was not in the mood for dialogue, so he answered the old man irritably, "What else is there to talk about? Old man, you're glad I got beaten up, aren't you?" The boy was not comfortable discussing this, and he always took the memories of his defeats hard, because for him it was very sad and hurtful. But the old man didn't want to make fun of the boy. He calmly answered him, "Little Kai, you would be better off. Come back home. The heavenly pavilion is not the right place for you. One day you might lose your life." The old man wanted the best for the boy. So he realized that he didn't belong in this academy, and he wouldn't be able to achieve much success here. So he advised the boy to return home. But the protagonist did not want to listen to such advice. He rejected the idea that he could give up and leave here. He had a goal, and he was going to it. So he calmly answered the old man that he had no place to return to, so he must achieve results here. With these words, the boy left the room. The man did not react in any way to the boy's departure. He only said to himself, Oh, pill of essence tempering. How long will she stay with this old man? I had to lie a little to give you hope, however. I think you still wouldn't believe me. That old man was keeping some kind of secret. The action moves to the village of Black Plum. The boy is walking down one of the streets and thinks that every time he comes to this village he feels a little anxious and uncomfortable. But today these feelings are completely absent, and he walks as if nothing had happened in the middle of the street without feeling any discomfort. The boy is walking and thinking at 6, trying to understand, what is the reason for such a sudden change in his behavior? Is it all because of that golden skeleton? Is it so much affected the inner character of the boy that now he feels a change in such familiar things? The main character looked around and looked into one of the dark corners of the city. There was a group of teenage students standing there. They were talking to some other people there. The boy saw two familiar faces there in that crowd. He quickly turned away. But they also saw that the boy looked at them and saw them. So the main character decided to quickly go about his business and get out of here. But the boy thought he saw in this crowd a student of his academy. He was attracted by the familiar features of the face, and it seemed to him that he had seen this man before. But as the boy quickly decided to turn away and leave, he hardly saw the faces. But the next moment, the boy realized that there was nothing strange about it. After all, this is the village of Black Plums or near the Sky Pavilion, near the place of learning. So sees a couple of students here in the order of the rules, and there is nothing unusual about it. The boy went into one of the rooms and saw a woman there. As soon as he saw her, he immediately cheerfully said, "Auntie, hello." The girl who was there also recognized the boy and welcomed him. She asked him if he had come for rice again as usual. The boy answered in the affirmative and asked for 1 sack of rice. He often bought rice in this store, so the sales clerk already knew him. The girl started to measure the rice and at the same time decided to ask the boy. She noticed that the boy buys a bag of rice only once a month. She asked the boy if he had enough rice, as it was not enough for a normal person. But the boy replied that he had more than enough, and had enough for the time being. The sales clerk did not believe him. She called the boy a liar, and said that just by looking at his shriveled body you could already tell that he was undernourished and lacked it. But the boy replied that he hunts in the mountains nearby, and it is enough to feed himself. He has good skills as a hunter, and he has enough to eat. Next to the girl sat an old man who was filling out some papers. He overheard their conversation and said that the saleswoman could take that old rice from the warehouse and give it to this young man if he needed it so badly. The woman got excited and accepted that this was the perfect solution. She said loudly that she would, and that's perfect. But the boy was a little ashamed. He didn't want to be given handouts like a beggar. He said they didn't have to do that. But the sales clerk objected that because the insects had gnawed through the bags of rice, they couldn't sell it. The sales clerk's husband said that getting rid of the insects was much more important than a couple of bags of rice, so she could easily give them to the protagonist. The saleswoman tells the boy to wait for her at this place and that she will be back soon with the rice. The protagonist realizes that every time he buys rice here, the boss, his wife, keeps finding different excuses to give him much more rice. In fact, there is nothing wrong with him. The boy is not old or sick, but still everyone thinks he needs help and that he is unhappy and poor. But the protagonist realizes that he has no choice, and he really has little food. All he has to do is to accept help from the surrounding. Although he is ashamed, but there is nothing to do. It really helps him a lot, and because of this, he does not starve to death. The boy thanked the sales clerk for the gift. The owner of this store asks the boy, "You're lonely, aren't you? I'm sure you're going through a hard time. If you are hungry, come to us, even though we don't have much, but we always have rice." The shopkeeper realizes that the boy is going through a difficult time in his life and needs help. So as a conscientious person, the man offers the boy to come to him if he is hungry and needs help. The protagonist obediently agrees and accepts this offer. He was very grateful to this man and this place for the fact that they always supplied him with plenty of rays. And because of this, the boy managed not to starve for long periods of time. Suddenly, 2 hooligans appeared at the door of the store entrance. They were met by one of the employees of the store and greeted them with the phrase, "Gentlemen, what would you like to buy?" But these 2 people were not in a friendly mood. One of them pushed the store employee and he fell down. An employee of the store fell painfully on his back on the cold floor. He was pushed by one of the hooligans, and the seller did not expect such insolent behavior on the part of customers. Honest and friendly people always come into this store, but this time some hooligans got here. The owner of the store rushed to the scene. He asked anxiously, "What happened here?" He wanted to quickly find out what was the cause of the fall of one of the employees and why the fight begins here. At this time, the main character helped the shopkeeper to his feet and examined him. But these 2 people didn't forgive the attention that they might have injured one of the employees. They didn't care about the people around them, and the only thing one of these boys said was shouting, "Who's the boss?" He wanted to see the boss of this place and who owns this business. The man calmly stepped forward and said that he was the owner of this shop, and he was responsible for everything here. The man was not afraid of these hooligans, and calmly approached them and wanted to know what the matter was and what they wanted. But one of the boys wasn't as good-natured as the owner of this establishment. He shouted, "Hey, man, you sold my brother poisoned rice!" Even he, who was strong and sturdy, just became so weak after a bowl of your rice. "Selling poisoned rice for profit is despicable and brazen, you soulless old man," the boy shouted angrily at the manager of the place. The man stood looking at the boy in amazement. He could not believe it, for in his entire history, no one had ever complained about rice, and no one had ever been poisoned by it. The man said to the boy, "This is simply impossible." But the second bully said, "You, his brother, bought some rice from the man this morning and had lunch with it. After that, his brother became very weak. Good thing he didn't have time to eat all his portion." The man was still standing in shock. He didn't know how to react to this. After all, he had never encountered anything like this before. The man decided to try to settle the situation. He said, "At this point, mister, I think this is some kind of misunderstanding." But the bully didn't let him finish his sentence. He interrupted the man and shouted, "Misunderstanding, you old liar! If it wasn't for your rice, my brother would be fine now." The protagonist initially wanted to stand up for the owner of this establishment. He wanted to start arguing with these hooligans because he realized that the owner of the store had nothing to do with it. But the man interrupted him and said that even if he suffered losses, he should avoid trouble, and there was no need for conflicts. Fighting and brawling, that's not what his store's business needs, because his store is already quiet and unremarkable. The man looked at the two boys again and said to them, "Coming back to your brother's illness, I don't suppose there is anything I can do to help him." The man wanted to answer these two as politely as possible, for he did not understand what they wanted from him. But one of the hooligans was enraged. He shouted with hatred, "What? You don't know?" But the man, the owner of the establishment, decided to calm him down and continued, "However, it remains that here I am absolutely unable to do anything already. But I can't just look at your sick brother either. Maybe he should call a doctor. Maybe he can help him somehow." The man realized that even if the rice was poisoned, there was no help for his brother now, and a doctor should be called. The boy interrupted the shopkeeper again. He shouted to him, "Hey, old man, are you trying to make us look like crooks? That's impossible. We are good people who always follow the path of goodness, but you sold us poisoned rice, so what can we do?" The shopkeeper still listened to this boy calmly. He drained him to the end and replied, "What are you? If you have money problems, I can pay for the treatment myself." Suddenly, another student of the academy entered the shop. He was dressed in blue clothes and looked like a typical student. He went inside with the words, "Gentlemen, don't quarrel. Wait a minute." At that moment, the protagonist realized that it was them he had seen in that dark alley. It was them he had noticed when he was walking down the city street. He saw the four of them, and they were together. So they were together and up to something. This student is clearly not here to help. The two hooligans also noticed the newly appeared man in the room and said to him, "Stop acting like a hero. What do you want? Speak up." The boy with purple eyes and purple hair who entered the room said, "Your brother is so weak. Isn't this one me so strong?" He decided to ask how strong the poison he had taken was. But one of the giants replied that it was obvious, and they were already wasting this precious treatment time to bring out this old man. After all, if they don't expose this old man, other people might suffer. So they are here for a good cause. The protagonist realized that there was something wrong here, and these people were obviously up to something. He saw them all together. So they were for one. The boy asked the shopkeeper if he had offended any of them before, because maybe they were trying to take revenge for something. But the man replied that it had never happened, and that it was the first time he had ever seen these people. The boy was curious about the plan of these crooks and what they wanted. The boy asked the shopkeeper if it was possible that his rice store might be in the way, and that he might have competitors who wanted to get rid of it. But the man replied that he just had a small store, so he had no competitors and could not get in anyone's way. The protagonist realizes that the situation is getting stranger and stranger. What do these people want? So he tries to figure out what their goals are and what their cunning plan is. But suddenly, that purple-haired student who had just recently entered the shop punched one of the bullies in the stomach. It hit him unexpectedly in a way that he didn't expect it. That's why everyone around turned around to look at it. But this bully was able to dodge the attack at the last moment. He managed to react to the blow at the last moment and jumped away from the direction of the student's fist. He noticed his arm movement at the very last moment. Therefore, he managed to prevent himself from falling. The purple-haired boy noticed how the bully was able to dodge his punch. He said, "Wow, Despite the poison you took along with the rice, you were able to dodge my attack so easily. That's amazing. The boy realized that if the man had really taken the poison, he would hardly have the strength to dodge other people's blows. In this way, the purple-haired student was able to expose the two cheaters. The people behind their backs shouted to the two hooligans, "You're cheaters! You set them up! How much longer are you going to try to cheat?" A large crowd had already formed around the store, all gathered to watch the shopkeeper being accused of spiking the leads with poison. But now that the truth had come out, everyone realized that these two were just liars and cheats. And the biggest redeeming feature was this student with purple hair. The protagonist stood and thought. He could not understand why all this spectacle, and why they had ended this conflict so strangely. He realized that this student, and his heroic actions, by which he defends the part of the weak made on purpose to raise his reputation in the city. And this whole show is just to make himself look like a hero in front of the other dots, and to make all the people around him respect him. One of the hooligans shouted to the boy with purple hair, "Hey, freak! Mind your own business!" The hooligans realized that they had already been exposed, and had no chance to continue their deception. So the second of the hooligans said, "Damn, Heavenly Pavilion, no wonder. Today we two brothers admit our defeat. I remembered you. We'll be back again one day." It was obvious to the protagonist that it was all just a show and it wasn't true. They're obviously acting out the whole thing as an arrangement. The boy with purple hair proudly said, "My name is Sumu and I am a disciple of the Heavenly Pavilion." He stood proudly under the enthusiastic shouts of the crowd. He looked like a hero when he saved an entire store from provocation. But the protagonist realized that it was all a hoax and shouldn't be believed. The protagonist realized that if he let these two bullies just walk away like that, their plan would be successfully executed. That purple-haired student must want to be respected by the deceived people. The protagonist couldn't let that happen. He decided to seize his opportunity before those hooligans left. He shouted in their wake, "Hey! Where are you going? You despicable cheaters! You haven't even apologized to this store. If we don't teach them a lesson now and let them go, they might pull the same prank again next time, like at a clothing store or a grocery store." The crowd around the store agreed with this. They supported the boy and realized that they could not let all these criminals go now. Someone in the crowd shouted, "That's right. We shouldn't just let these scoundrels go like this. If we let them go, then one day they might come to my store too. In fact, my reputation." The people in the crowd supported the protagonist's thoughts and agreed with him. Everyone realized that these crooks demanded punishment, and they should be punished right now before they could escape. The protagonist looked at the other student and said to him, "Brother, if I'm not mistaken, you said earlier that all good deeds should be completed, right? How about we work together to apprehend these criminals of yours?" The boy decided to address this purple-haired student, realizing that he was in a predicament right now. After all, he can't arrest his friends. The main character said that he is also a disciple of the Celestial Pavilion, and has tried it for almost 3 years, so he can help the boy with clearing the city of criminals. The protagonist said loudly for all to hear, "Being brave and courageous is my way of life. So, brother, let's arrest these two scoundrels together and help Mr. Shopkeeper to get justice. By doing so, we will raise the prestige of the village." He realized that this student didn't want it as much as possible, but it was important for the protagonist to bring these crooks to justice, and to bring justice without lies. The purple-haired student realized that this boy seemed to have figured out their plan and was now doing everything he could to make everyone around him aware of their deception. So he looked at the protagonist's face with anger. But there was nothing to do. He would have to fulfill his requests in the hope that they would not be discovered and no one would know about their deception.